know you spoke last week about, end of the season, it takes some time to kind of process everything, and I know it's only been less than a day since that last game, but what have kind of been your emotions and feelings about not only the season coming to an end, but also your time as a head coach during the last 18 hours or so?
Well, the one thing, when I left Orlando, I did the consulting thing in Brooklyn, and I thought I was ready to kind of move on, this next phase of whatever was going to be there for me. I knew I wanted to be in the NBA because I love it, but I thought I'd be good with not being a head coach. And as much as I enjoyed the consulting thing in Brooklyn, I definitely realized like I wanted one more opportunity. So when this happened, as well as it was, I was excited, one, because I needed that, my basketball fix or whatever. I miss being in charge, but also because it was here, and it was with Michael, with Mitch, who I'd worked for, and in a place where, as you guys know, especially when I was here the time before, I felt like we were knocking on the door, and you got to remember now, my first experiences were what 20 plus years ago, where played out in the old arena, and these fans were unbelievable. I remember, I think we were playing Toronto in the first round of the series. Charlotte swept Miami back when it was 3 out of 5. Baron Davis, David Wesley, Mashburn, those guys. And, I saw up close and personal what this place could be like with a winning team. And then, before, the series that we lost to Miami in 7, the 3 home games here were, I would say the home court advantage for us was almost as good as it gets in this league, So part of the thing for me has always been to be part of that, to be a team, as Michael's always said, and then Rick and Gabe will do the same thing, where the goal is to build a roster where there can be sustained playoff success, where we're a factor, where we're more relevant. And, I thought that we could do that. Now, it hasn't played out that way. And yet, as I sit here, and part of it is in these last 2 weeks, doing the Boston prep and doing the Dallas prep, both games where more of our guys played. Melo played both those games. Mark played both those games. And if you sit and watch those games, you can't help but feel good about where the roster is at. And the new ownership, to me, I think that their vision of what this can become is right on. I think the way that they'll handle things, the way they'll organize things, they have a great understanding of how they want to do it. And I think Jeff will be great here. So there's so much to look forward to. But the biggest disappointment for me, frankly, is just, these 2 years, I don't want to make excuses, but, we just never, had continuity enough to really build a game. People can say whatever you want. I know when you watch games, it's always about chemistry, and it's not it. It's not it. You got to have a way to play. And chemistry comes into that. But it starts with having enough talent on the floor, and this league has changed now. It used to be 8, 9 guys. Now you need 11, 12 guys. But you got to have a way to play. With each group, each year, that changes. That makes sense in the league. How you win now is balanced play. It's always been that way. You want to go all the way back, go ever since I've been in the league. You're not going to just outscore people in the playoffs, and you're not going to win 92, 91. You got to be good on offense. You got to be good on defense. And I think that this group is built that way. I think the drafting of Brandon Miller is huge because he'll be good at all of it, in my opinion. But I do think that it's an exciting time, and that I'm looking forward to be part of that. In a different role that, I just think for where I am in my life is more fits me.
There's 2 things you mentioned just about Mark and LaMelo, those 2 guys watching, I guess, the game prep and just seeing what they were like when they were out. Just from your perspective, 2 years you've been here, just how good and how cool with those 2 guys be moving forward from what you've seen so far?
Well, I think that if you look at it, let's put it this way. the off season's always about progress, and it's internal progress, and then it's the external progress. So the internal progress is what they do on the floor, bodies, guys that get stronger, more fit. And I will say, all of our guys, I would say, looking at where they are right now, even the guys that have been injured, I would be confident that they'll all be ready for training camp. They're all doing more now, which is a big sign, because you want to go into the off season where they're working on their conditioning, strength, games versus rehab. And so I think all of those guys will be ready, which is an important factor for next year. And then the next one is just, it's the external. That's the draft, whatever, free agency, trades, whatever it is. And if you look year to year, there's never one way a team is built. It changes, like for our team this year, like if those guys were healthy and we were getting ready to play next weekend as, say, a 5th seed, which maybe we could have, one of the biggest things last summer was Brandon Miller's draft, because he's obviously, listen, I was excited about him last year, and he's a better player already than I thought he could be. So you don't know, but it could be a trade. Listen, the last time, you guys might remember, we went from being a non-playoff team to a team that won 48 games because we went from 27th in three-point shooting to like 6. So what were the factors in that? We got Nick Batum. We got Jeremy Lin playing for minimum, okay, who had the best year of his career. But we hired Bruce Kreitzer. And Marvin Williams worked with him all summer, shot like 39 the next year. And Kemba Walker went from 32.5 to 38. So that's how we did it. It was both internally and externally. And sometimes there will be moves for every team this summer that won't be the biggest free agent signing or whatever. When Jeremy Lin signed here, nobody was going crazy, okay? And he changed that team because he could play the 2 with Kemba, and he could play the point when Kemba wasn't in there. And it gave us a group of 9 of, just to be honest, veteran, intelligent, tough as hell team. It's just, we had so many free agents, we couldn't keep them all, But so you're not going to know, but that's what the offseason is for.
I think you mentioned Gabe and Rick, their vision, being around for a year or so. What do you see from those 2 guys trying to move the franchise forward here?
Well, I think that, as they said, I think that they view Charlotte as a place where players will want to come, which I agree with. All the players that come here love it. I've never been around a player so far that didn't like living here. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But this is an easy place to me to bring pro players to and have them want to stay here. I think that they will be maniacal about roster, study, improvement, daily, being on top of it. And I think that they'll spend a lot of time, obviously working with Jeff on what wins in the NBA, the study part, and then, roster versatility, having freedom, flexibility is a better word, so that, you have a chance to, constantly make moves. But if you sit and talk to them, listen, they're just highly successful, very bright men that have a passion for the NBA. And, success usually comes down to personal qualities, and you spend time with them, you just get the feeling that they're going to figure this out.
Steve, as you transition into this next role with the organization, how much input will you have with the next coach, and what kind of coach do you feel like this is?
Yeah, I think all that stuff is like to be determined, really, we haven't talked a whole lot about it other than, I'm going to take a few days off here, and then, next week, and then my role will be, whatever to be determined, by Rick, by Gabe, by Jeff. And so I think some of that may depend on who the coach is, if I know him or not, or what they want. Different coaches want to set up their staff different ways. The one thing I would be, and they know I feel this way, is you got to let the head coach have the say on how he wants to do things. You know, so like what I want to be is I want to be a plus for the organization. I want to do things in a way, regardless of what it is, that might just be study. You know, it might be just, you know, whatever, you know, figuring out why some teams pick and roll defense is better than the other teams or whatever it is. But I want to be more of a resource, but I want to do it in a way that I'm only a positive. You know, I was an assistant for a long time, and the one thing I learned is this: if they gave you 3 things to do those 3 things as well as you can. And when you think you're good at them, do it better. Don't worry about doing his job, and his job. And I tell my staff that all the time. If everybody does what they're told, that's how you function well, okay? This league is hard enough. You need everybody pulling in the same direction. And when guys are given chores, duties, okay, responsibilities, and they try to knock them out of the park, that's when you have an effective staff. So, you know, what I want to be is high work and, you know, no maintenance. You know, just I want them to view me as somebody like, you know, we're lucky he's here. But I'm not in a position where I'm going to be trying to hit home runs here.
Steve, as you look at this roster and how it's beat up right now, and you have hands-on experience with it, where does this team need to improve specifically? What positions, what areas?
Yeah, I mean, you know what's hard for me on that is, you know, like, so the team that, even for this year, the team that you'd want to study to make, you know, like real without guessing things on, you know, these guys played 14 minutes together this year. We had 14 minutes in Orlando where they were all healthy. That's it. And Melo went down early in the second quarter. So, you know, obviously this is a team game with flow, right? So much of it is just, you know, it's talent, number one, but it's how guys fit together. And the guy who, to take a big step, obviously, the guy who plays in a manner where he can make everybody fit together easy didn't play, and that's Melo. I mean, you watch Melo against Boston, he was 36, I want to say maybe like 10 assists, 9 rebounds, or 9 assists, 8 rebounds against Boston, okay? And Mark was like, I think in that game, like 16 and 14, okay? You watch the Dallas game, and that's when Melo still, remember now, Melo was not even cleared to play 5-on-5 until camp started. So those first few games, I think Dallas was maybe game 7 or 6 or 8. And, you know, he still wasn't in shape. And yet, in the first 3 quarters, because that's what we had gotten to, he was only trying to get everybody else involved. And then he took over in the fourth. And that was his first really good game of the year. So I think it's really hard to evaluate. I will say this, offensively, and this was without Miles, you know, who's obviously, you know, a talented player. You know, after 10 games playing without Miles, you know, we're 9th in offense. And that's Melo not in shape. Mark Williams was not their own fault, but just because they just got cleared, Mark was the same. So we already had injuries. Terry missed 3 of those games, I believe. But you can see the offensive part. And, you know, I've told Jeff this, and I'll share it with Rick and Gabe too. You know, the hard thing for me is this, because this is my responsibility, although there were a lot of factors. Whoever we hire as the coach, I can't say to them, pick and roll coverage with Mark Williams, this is what you need to do. Because we didn't do it for a long enough period to say it's going to work. You know, you guys know, look, I'm aggressive, always have been with pick and rolls and stuff. Like, I think you can't sit back and, you know, let teams just run their offense in the NBA anymore. It's a lot different, right? Other people aren't. Now, it always worked before, when I was here before, and that was with Al, with Cody. I mean, we went to Orlando where their pick and roll defense hadn't been good. We were blitz happy with Vucevic, and they didn't think it would work, and we were top 10 defense there. So I do think some of it can work, but I would tell a new coach, I would start from scratch. I'd be careful how much of the film I watch that way, and find the best way for Mark Williams or whoever to do everything, because again, we had stretches in defense these last couple of years were good, 10 games here, 18 games there, but never sustained it. And that, too, that's what this league is all about. It's having the talent, but then you got to have the right plan for that group. And I'm not running away from the question, but I don't think it's fair with all the injuries we've had. Shit, they weren't on the floor enough together for me to really say this, the only thing is they didn't play well together. They didn't play enough minutes together.
I know the LaMelo stuff was very much out of your control, Steve. But I guess how frustrating was it? It seemed like from the outside looking in, a lot of stop, start. I know a lot of it was out of your control, but how frustrating was that part of it?
Oh, it's difficult, and he wants to play. Listen, Melo's great. I mean, I think that he has an elite talent, like at his size, his shot creation, shot making, and desire to win, is exceptional. The desire to win piece, I don't think people have seen yet around the league like they will, hopefully as he plays in bigger games. He's extremely coachable. The one thing I feel comfortable with is, for him, his pick and roll offense has limited games improved tremendously in 2 years. His finishing at the rim, decision making in the paint, he gotten a lot better at, and his defense is a lot better. So I think that nothing has changed other than he's got to get healthy, But I mean, in my mind, he can be a top player or second best player on a great team.
And secondly, for me, of something that would be in your control, if there was something that was in your control over the last 2 years, you can go back and change, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say probably, messing around with the five-man pick and roll coverages more, especially when Mark played, because I think one of his strengths, Mark, is he's super smart and he's very agile for a big man. So if you want to go 2 years ago, I think we had a 20-game stretch where we were like second in defense, and again, we were super aggressive with him. He was out on the floor double teaming, rotating, guarding smaller guys. And yet, like looking back on it, I'm not sure if you don't spend more time where you do the Brook Lopez, and just stick him right down closer to the basket and see what happens, and just say, because his rim protection numbers are very good. Like his instincts, his reaction time for a man his size are exceptional. And obviously, when you take him away from the basket, like what we did, one, it fatigues him, and two, he's away from the basket. So there's good and bad. The one thing I do know going forward, he's really smart and he can remember all of it. So you can function well using him different ways. But for sure this year, that's one of the things that I would look at again.
Coach, a 2-game season, can you talk about the two iterations of this team, pre and post trade deadline, and maybe how that affected your coaching?
Yeah, well, I think there's almost three parts of it, because I think it's, before, where, the injuries decimated us, before we made the trades. I think once we made the trades, we had a totally different feel in the locker room. We were older, more veteran, guys like a guy like Seth Curry is just, in my opinion, invaluable to have around a team. And I knew that because, he was in Brooklyn when I was there. And he's still a very good player, but he's a phenomenal teammate, and he's a phenomenal role model. DB is similar to that. Bertans, those guys have been around. They've played on really good teams. And they brought something to the locker room that was good for the younger players that way. And then, so with that group, we were actually started off where we were pretty balanced, but our defense was great. And the other piece was Cody was back. you know, so once Cody, the game in Philly where Cody and Seth both went down, then, you know, we go from being a, you know, a decent talent defensively to, you know, it's a struggle, you know, just to guard the ball. You're taking away. Cody Martin was playing defensively at a level, I mean, he would, you know, whatever. If you play like that for 82 games, he'd be in the conversation for all defensive. He was that dominant. And Seth Curry is a very good team defender. And when we lost those guys, you know, our defense was, it was hard. So I think there's really three parts to it. I will say this, I was proud. The one thing I will say, we didn't establish offense, we didn't establish defense. They know how to practice. Guys know how to work. They understand purpose of play. They're very receptive to being coached. And it starts with the best play. You can coach Melo. People ask me all the time, other coaches. You can say, listen, I've said stuff to Melo. He didn't care. You know, he likes it. He'll say, like, that's the only way I'm going to get better. You can coach Miles. You can coach Brandon Miller. You can say stuff to Mark Williams. Like, they're young and they want to get better. So those are all, I think, characteristics in our league that are hard to come by that are really important.
There's a couple questions for me. One, the first one quickly. Have you been a part of the coaching interview process at all? Is that something you'd like to do?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just with discussions a little bit with Jeff about, do you know this guy or that guy? And I think, again, when I'm going to come back next Monday, and we're going to sit down and talk about it. And yeah, I mean, I'm up for any of, to be honest, like, like the question about working with the next head coach, if they want that, I mean, you know, obviously that's something I'm interested in. I'm also interested, though, in learning about the draft and how they organize the draft or what they do to prepare for free agency. Because I've never really been that much into personnel. And so that part of it I'm looking forward to also. So if it's working a lot with a new coach, that'd be great. But I am selfishly, you know, I do want to learn. Like, you know, Jeff, Ryan, those guys are in Brooklyn, and they were, like Sean Marks and those guys, they're on it. They are super organized. So I would like to, you know, be in those meetings like I've told them so I can learn from them.
That was my next question. You mentioned that too in your stepping down press conference. Is that what you anticipate hitting once you come back from a break? And if so, evaluating the draft, are you going to continue to be a film junkie? Do you want to scout and travel more? How do you see yourself being involved in the draft?
Yeah, I would say more probably, because I'll be a novice, like probably sitting here and just watching film would make more sense instead of spending money, so I'm not bumbling around showing up late for games and stuff, you know. This part I can do for sure, you know. That part, they probably need somebody with a little more experience, you know.
Steve, over the last 2 seasons, what's something that sticks out to you as a high point or maybe something to be particularly proud of?
I think last year we went 18 games where we were like second in defense, and it really started with Mark Williams when he, you know, we weren't playing him much early, right? He was in the G League, and then right after the trade deadline, when he and Nick were playing, and it really changed our team, you know, at the defensive end, and he was dominant. I mean, he did all of it. I mean, we, you know, you guys may remember, you know, we're +1 here, we get a switch, he blocks Trae Young's shot. I mean, it was just a great, great play that not many guys his size would be able to make. So I think that we've had a number, you know, of like really good, you know, like this year, you know, Melo likes to talk about when he stripped Halliburton. I'd call that a missed dribble from a great player, but he has a different view, and I think they're getting ready to kick me out here. But, you know, winning in Milwaukee last year, winning in Sacramento. We had a bunch of good wins this year against good teams. Boston here. The game last year when we beat Dallas here, you know, was a good win. So, you know, again, for me though, it's we don't have a way to play. You got to have a way to play. There's got to be a way that when the game starts every night, they all know if we do this on offense, if we do this on defense, if we do this rebounding, we're good. And that's my disappointment because that's what I've always been able to do. You go back to Kemba and those guys, they would say it. You know what I mean? Like, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. And that's changes from team to team because that's where you're getting to what wins in the league, but what the strength of your roster is. And that's how the guys were in Orlando, Vucevic and those guys. Like, once they figured out if we do these things, we're going to win, that's when you got a chance.
What do you feel like is the must-do free agency move internally? That you guys got to bring back, we got to make sure it doesn't go.
Yeah, well, I would say that that's this next month to me. I mean, again, I don't want to beg out on the question, but I haven't been thinking like that at all. But I think that as you go from the end of the season right now, it's for the guys, what are their plans, what are their priorities for the summer, and then also for the organization. Good? Thank you.